Hi everybody, I am Kim Klima and I'm from the Girl Scouts of Northeast Ohio, and I'm enjoying this day today. Even though it's not super sunny, it's not really cold either, and so it's a nice spring day. And this is my horse Buck, and Buck and I thought it would be great to share with you some things so that you can start working on your virtual horseback riding badge workshop. So if you take a look at this, might look familiar, and you can find this on our website on the VTK. And we're not going to be able to earn the whole thing, of course, because you actually have to go for a ride yourself, and eventually you'll be able to do that. But right now, we're going to prepare, because that's what Girl Scouts do. We prepare. So this is Buck. He's excited, as you can tell, to be a movie star today. He is a quarter horse, and there's a lot of different breeds of horses. Quarter horses were really cowboy horses. They were used to wrestle up cattle, and they're very fast in short spurts. So different kinds of horses are good at different types of things. You could probably tell that he's pretty muscular, and that's because he is a quarter horse. And even though he's 20 years old, right? His birthday was April 1st, so it was just a little while ago, but on April 1st, 2000, he was born, and so he's 20. And horses typically live, 25, 30 years for the most part. Some live a lot longer. I knew a horse one time that was 40 years old, but Buck is in great health. He just saw the vet the other day, got all his spring shots, and got a clean bill of health, so we're really happy about that. And today we're coming to you live from where Buck lives. So because Buck doesn't have a barn at my house, I have to board him. And so what does that mean is it's kind of like horsey apartments. And so he lives at the stables at Windy Acres. And he has 23 friends here. So there's altogether 24 horses that live here at Windy Acres. And we have other people that own horses that help feed the horses. I feed the horses a couple times a week. We all kind of take turns helping to clean up and helping each other out. It's kind of like a Girl Scout family, but it's a horse family, so it's really exciting. So right now, we're going to pause here, and we're going to walk around the other side of the barn, where I have some other things that I'd really like to show you. All right, hi guys. Here we are on the other side of the barn. You could see Buck came with us, and in order to keep him calm and in place and not running all around, we put him in what we call cross ties. So that's when we put this kind of leash. If it was a dog, it would be a leash, right? So this cross tie on this side, and then there's one on this side, and that kind of keeps him right in the middle where I need him to stay for this segment of our video. So I was mentioning to you guys before that Buck is a quarter horse, and he is an older quarter horse, so he knows how to behave, and usually he does. But we all have our moments, right? So we like to keep him in the cross ties just to make sure that he is going to be a good boy. All right, so in this segment of our video, what we'd like to talk about is equipment, a little bit about clothing, the proper attire when you're going to go horseback riding, and also tack. So we're going to cover that right now. So you might notice that when we were in the first part of our video, I had a different coat on, right? And it was kind of really messy. And I did that on purpose because I wanted you guys to see that when you're at the barn and you're working with horses, you're going to get really dirty. So you want to make sure that you're prepared for that. I also had on different gloves. So these are my working gloves. I wear these when I'm cleaning the stall or when I'm feeding the horses. They tend to get wet and really, really gross. But now I have on my better gloves. So these are the gloves that I use when I'm riding my horse or I'm working my horse. Just because I like them better, and they're cleaner at the moment. So the other thing I wanted you guys to notice is that I have on long pants. And again, they're not the cleanest of pants. This is not a fashion show, but I have on long pants, and I have on what we call, well, these are hiking boots, but I wear these boots to muck out the stalls and do all my dirty work. I actually have another pair of boots. I don't have them with me right now, but when I know I'm going to be in the fields and like up to here in mud, I wear those. Those are my muck boots, and also those keep my feet really warm in the wintertime. But if I was going to ride Buck, I'd have to change my boots because these boots are too chunky and they could get stuck in the stirrup, and we don't want that. So one of the things that I wanted to point out to you is there's all kinds of shoes that are okay to ride in, but what you want to make sure that it's a more narrow shoe so it doesn't get stuck in the stirrup. and also that it has a heel so that your foot doesn't go through the stirrup, because that could be really, really dangerous. If something goes wrong and your horse needs you to hold on tight and your foot goes through the stirrup all the way, that could be bad. That could be really, really bad. So I also have these fun boots. I love them because there's horses on them. I don't know if you could tell, but sometimes I wear these when I'm riding. It still has a heel. It's a little bit of a taller boot, so it protects my leg, and also thinner, so they're not gonna get stuck in the stirrup. And sometimes I clean the barn with these too, which you might be able to tell because they're a little bit dirty. Even when I clean them, they're dirty. So that's a little bit about what I wear when I go riding. Now I'd like to talk to you a little bit about what Buck wears. Okay, so there's different styles of things. I have one horse and I have one style to show you, but I'll talk a little bit about some of the other things that you might hear around a barn. So first of all, what Buck is wearing around his face right here, this is called a halter, and it's a rope halter. So it's one kind of halter. There's many different kinds. I like this one, first of all, because it's turquoise, and that's my favorite color, and if a girl can't be fashionable, then what are we doing? Also, it has these knots right here in the rope, and when this knot helps him to behave, because he understands when that knot hits his face that he feels it a little bit more. It doesn't hurt in any way, but he can feel it, so he gets that signal and that cue. You need a halter on your horse so you can control it. If I didn't have a halter on him and he got away, I'd have a really hard time catching him, especially me. I'm not a lasso girl, right? But he does have another kind of halter, and I'll show you that one too. This is just a regular halter. You can see it doesn't have those knots, right? But it does have a place where I could loop his lead rope through over his nose and give me a little bit more control. But I really like the rope one because it's just cooler, I think. So then the other thing, we talked about the cross ties, but when I take Buck for a walk, he kind of needs a lead rope, and so he has a rope, a type of lead. And again, of course, it's turquoise, so it matches. And I could just take this buckle, put it right on the bottom of his harness, and then we could go for a walk. And that's what you saw him in our previous video. So he doesn't need that right now because he's in the cross ties. There's all different kinds of ropes like that as well. There's a lot of fashionable things to do when you're riding, so you can definitely, diva out if you want. Just remember, everything's going to get dirty. The other rope I want to show you is a little bit longer. And so it kind of looks like the first rope I showed you, the lead, but this is what we call a lunge line. So lunging a horse is a type of exercise. And basically what you do is you take the snap, you put it right on the halter, and then you kind of let your horse go farther away from you and run around in a circle while you give him commands. And so that is exercise. He's not only getting his muscles worked and stuff, which is really good, but also he's learning to listen. So if I say walk, he walks. If I say trot, he trots. That's a little bit faster. If I say canter, that's another gait. That's what we call those different speeds on a horse. And if I say canter, he canters. Of course, he always listens and does exactly what I say, right? No, he doesn't. What we're learning. So the thing about horses is you got to be with them every day. Like, you really need to spend quality time together so that you learn each other. When you spend a lot of time together, you're happier because your horse learns what it is you're saying and what you want them to do. If you don't work with your horse very often, they get confused and they get upset. They don't like to listen to you. Plus, they get out of shape, and that's really a bad thing. You might notice he's got a lot of muscles in here, so we got to keep him exercised, right? So sometimes we use aids when we're riding, and we'll talk about that at another time, but when we're riding or when we're working with our horse, sometimes you have different aids. I mentioned to you that some of these lines have a longer chain. It's not just a snap. So if it had a longer chain and I really needed him to behave and maybe he's having a bad day, I can take the chain over his nose. It really gives me more control and it makes him pay attention a little bit differently. So there's different kinds of leads. This is a rope lunge line. Another aid, sometimes Buck and I have to use what we call a crop. And there's a longer one of these. This is something that you use when you're riding usually. It's short enough that you can just tap your horse in the butt right there, and he kind of figures out what you're saying or starts paying attention. But when you're lunging, there's a longer one so that it's an extension of your arm, and you could really reach out and give him more signals without being right up on him, because remember, it's a long line, so he's far away from you. So you need a longer crop, which is a lunge crop. Now, these do not hurt the horse. I know, even though I know that, I still sometimes feel bad when I'm using them, but you don't have to feel bad. It really is just a tool to help them understand, so that when they're understanding you, they're having a better time and you're having a better time. We don't smack our horses really hard, but we tap them or make a snapping sound so they pay attention and they like wake up and smell the coffee, you know? Sometimes you got to do that. All right, so that is a little bit about things that you use when you're not riding. But if you're going to ride your horse, what you want to make sure that you have is a bridle. So this is another kind of thing that goes over their head, and actually in their mouth. So you can probably see right here, this part is the bit, and the bit is what goes in the horse's mouth. There's a space in their jaw where there's no teeth, so it doesn't rub. It sits in a spot where it doesn't hurt them, but again, it's giving them a signal. This is a snaffle bit. There's different kinds depending on what your horse needs in terms of training. This chain here goes under the chin, so that just helps steady everything. And then this goes over his head, and his ears kind of poke out through here. And then the reins, of course. So the reins are the part that you're going to steer him with, that you hold on to when you are riding. And there's a lot of different kinds of bridles. This is a Western bridle. That's what I ride. I ride a Western type, horse saddle. So, when a horse is young, you got to get them used to taking the bit. Sometimes they don't want to do that. Sometimes their ears are really sensitive, and you have to be careful about how you handle your horse so they don't get kind of like irritated or sensitive, and then they become really difficult. Actually, Buck, he's been, like I said, he's not a spring chicken, right? He's an older guy, so he knows the way to do this really well, and he'll usually put his head down low for me and let me tack him up so it's not hard at all. And of course he earns treats when he does that. So the other thing that I want to show you is his blanket. So this is a blanket that goes underneath the saddle. You always want to make sure that you have something between the saddle and your horse. It's for comfort mostly. And the real important thing about your blanket is you always want to make sure that there's nothing on it that's going to poke them or hurt them in any way, because that could really be a bad ride for everybody. So I always shake this out real well, inspect it, make sure there's no sawdust on it or anything that could get pinchy, and then you just kind of put that up on your horse. And I'm going to do this from what we call the near side, okay? So this is the near side of your horse, or it's also known as the left side, but in horse world it's called the near side. You just kind of put it up there for him, put it up a little bit higher, closer to his head, and then you pull it back just a little bit. That way the hair isn't going a wrong direction underneath that blanket. You want to pull it back a little so all the hair lays back and it doesn't get irritating. And you can see Buck did really well with that. Again, he knows the ropes. And then of course we have our saddle. So this is a Western saddle. It's really big and it's kind of heavy. And the older I get, the heavier this saddle gets, okay? But you can see that it has a nice comfy seat. It's a Western saddle. It has a horn where you can really hold on. If you were a cowgirl or roping cattle, once you rope your cattle, you take your rope and tie it around the horn to help you hold on to that cow. But it also has, things to protect our legs here. And then underneath, you see all these pieces. So this goes under Buck's belly, and it's like a belt. It's the part that goes under his belly, and then we latch it to the other side so that it doesn't come off. You don't want your saddle to come off. And then this breast strap here, it just goes around underneath Buck's front to make sure the saddle doesn't slide backwards or fall off that way too. So I'll just take a real quick second and put this on Buck so you get an idea. And so what we're going to want to do is put it on from his near side or the left side. And I'll tell you a little bit about why that way. Could you put the saddle on from the other side? You could. Buck really wouldn't mind. But horses are creatures of habit. They like things to be the same all the time. And in the old days, the soldiers and stuff, they would have a really long sword, and they would usually carry it on their left side. And so that way, if they needed to draw their sword, they would do so with their right hand, because most people are right-handed. So when you get on your horse, you don't want to take that sword over your horse's back. So that's why they get on the near side. The funny thing is, you would think the other side would be called what? The far side. It's not. It's called the off side. And I don't know why. All right, so we're going to take, we kind of flipped everything over the saddle just to make sure that it's not smacking him all around. We lift this up and we put it on. Again, you want it up closer up here, and then you slide it back, and then we can gently put these, all these pieces parts down. All right, now we're going to take this stirrup and we're going to hook it on the horn so that we're ready to strap that girth on. The girth is the belt. So, come over here. Remember the belt, girth, it's going to go under his belly. And we're just going to pick it up over here. All right, now this is a real fancy way to tie a knot, right? So being a Girl Scout, I like knots too. And the way that you cinch up a horse, which is what we're doing now, cinching a horse. So you put it through, and then you want to get it tight as you can, and come back through the top again. And when you come through this time, you want the cinch to come out the back. I don't know if you can see that. Is that okay? Feel free to step in. So we go around through this way. And again, we want to make that tight because we don't want that saddle to come off. And then we cross over the front. So you want to cross it over and come back through the back. And then you can pull it down. Now, if you've ever tied a man's tie, it's a lot like this. Probably why I'm pretty good at that. Some people struggle. Now, the funny thing with horses, especially the ones that know what they're doing, they know when it's time to put their cinch on, they're going to puff up their belly really fat because they don't want it to be super tight. And so sometimes you just get it on, leave it like that for now, and then when you get out to the arena or after you take a couple steps, before you mount your horse, you want to come back and retighten it just because he's got the air out of his belly, and that'll be a little tighter. You also want to make sure, see, that's too loose. See, so once we got out to the arena, we tighten that up. You don't want to really be able to pull it that far away. Otherwise, your saddle's just going to fall right off when you're riding, and that would be bad. The stirrups are adjustable. They can go higher or lower. These are set for me. So I don't have to change them every time I ride because I really don't change very much. So if I needed to, I could adjust them and make them shorter. You always want to, and we'll go over this a little bit more later, but there's a line that would go from like your shoulder to your hip to your knee to your foot. You want to make sure that you can keep the right equisition, which is another term. It just means like your composure on a horse. So if you can't get it right, you might have to lower your stirrup, or if your stirrup's too far away from you, you have to raise up your stirrup just so that you can get that right line that you're looking for. So that's how we put on a saddle. Oh, and the breast strap. So again, this is going to come across the front. We're just going to put a little belt buckle here for him. And you can see he just stands so, he's such a good boy. He, you know, not every horse will stand so good for you, but he's a really good boy. He'll stand here like this for me, and he actually tries to help me out, you know. So he'll move where I need him to and stuff like that. And then he knows he gets a treat too. So we'll talk about treats. And then there's this little snap here, which is going to go right underneath and snap to the cinch. So that's how that is going to stay on him. And I'll snap it for now, but we're going to take this off in just a moment. So there's one more really important piece of equipment that I would say might be the most important piece of equipment. Before you go riding, you want to have the right clothes, you want to have the right shoes, you want to tack up your horse appropriately, make sure that they're not uncomfortable, and all that's really important. But what you really got to do is protect your noggin, right? So I have what I call, or what's called a helmet. Now this is not a bicycle helmet. This is made for horseback riding. So I have to take off my cowgirl hat, which I love to wear, and put on my helmet. And there's adjustable things inside because you want a snug fit. You want to make sure it's not too loose at all, just like a bicycle helmet. It has a chin strap, so you're going to put that on. That way if you fall, you're going to protect your head, right? Super duper important. Girl Scouts are always safety first, so we know as Girl Scouts we're going to wear a helmet. Let me just take a look at my notes here and make sure I'm covering everything. I know we did a lot of terminology already, but there's a couple things I haven't told you yet. So all these things that I showed you, the saddle, the bridle, the harness, that's what we call tack in the horse world. So tack is all the equipment that you need in order to really be safe and have an enjoyable ride. The other thing is cooling your horse. So you might hear somebody say, did you cool your horse? Well, if I was to ride Buck and he'd work up a sweat, he'd get kind of hot. And when a horse is hot, you don't want him to just put him away and let him eat and drink because he could get a really bad bellyache called colic, and it could be deadly. So what you have to do is you have to cool your horse down. And the way that you do that is just, you could take the tack off of him and just walk him for a while until he calms back down and all his vitals come back down and he's not so hot anymore. The other thing is in your book, your requirements, is called in front of the bit or on the bit. And so these are different terms. I showed you the bit on the bridle. That's the part that goes in their mouth, right? But when you're riding your horse, there's a way that your horse isn't pulling away from you or kind of lagging behind and being all distracted, but more collected and responding. And it's not just in their face or in their head or in their mouth that you feel that, but it's their whole body. You could feel that their body is working together and everything's kind of collected in where it needs to be. You have a good connection with your horse, and you could feel that as a rider. And that's what you call on the bit, like you're right where you need to be with your horse. Leg up. Okay, so this is really important because most people, especially people my age or size, can't just hop up on their horse. You know, some of you guys might be able to do that, but I surely can't. So what a leg up, if I was going to mount my horse, I would put my right foot or my left foot in the stirrup, and then somebody would come behind me and pick up my right leg and just kind of give me a little bit of a boost. I don't want to like pull my horse down, right? But actually, because I don't always have someone to give me a leg up, what I have is a mounting block. It's basically 3 steps. You walk your horse up to it, climb the steps, and you can get right on your horse. Getting off is a lot easier. So we talked about the near side. Remember, this is the side that we're going to work from. But then we have the off side. This is not necessarily the far side, right? And then there's, when you're riding your horse, there's something called posting. And so when your horse is walking, you guys are pretty much, you know, just calm and easy. But when your horse starts to trot, it's more bouncy. And you don't want to bounce on your horse. Just imagine somebody on your back bouncing around. So sometimes riders learn to post with their horse so that they kind of they let the horse give them a little bump when that leg hits the ground, and it will send you up, and you just kind of go with your horse so that you're not bouncing all around, because that's painful for both of you. And then lastly, the other term that you guys have in your paper is called wrangle. So if you look up wrangle in the dictionary, it could mean like fighting with something. I don't like to think of it that way. When we talk about wrangling, it's more about managing. It's more about making sure that you're kind of in charge and you're keeping order and peace with your horse, that you're wrangling it, right? So you want to make sure that, you might say, oh, I got to go wrangle up my horse, you know. It just kind of means like, go get your horse, bring him on over, and get him in paying attention to you. Funny thing about Buck is he's up all night. I have a camera in his stall, you know. I like to peek at him. He loves to sleep in the middle of the afternoon. So I don't know if you guys could see, but he's having a really relaxing time right now. He loves his ears to be pet, so he's just kind of dozing off, you know. this is his nappy time. So, right, Bucky? Yeah. All right, guys. Well, I hope you enjoyed this portion of our video, and I'm excited to come back and tell you a little bit more.